We also like to thank our sponsors. So this project's been sponsored by the Ross Trust and by DECA, the Department of, they changed their name recently, Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action. Just a little bit of an introduction to Zoom. I know that most people are very comfortable with Zoom these days, but I just wanted to make sure everyone has got the tools to use if they want to interact. So you can, if you want to talk, you can raise your hand and you can find that in the reactions button. To unmute yourself, you should find a little unmute button on your left bottom corner. And if you want to chat, you can put your questions in the chat box as well. And that's where you find the chat on the chat. Sorry, I'm just going to go back. That's later on. So I'm going to now hand over to Kim Boswell. Kim is our main speaker for the night. Kim has 20 years of experience in the not-for-profit sector as a community engagement expert. Kim is also a facilitator, trainer and coach, and the founder of the Forever Agenda, where she supports environmental and not-for-profits and community groups to increase their income, reach and capacity and impact. Yes, she's definitely got a lot of experience with a lot of land care and not-for-profit groups on the ground. She's been a facilitator herself. She's done quite a lot of things. And I'll head over to you now, Kim. So Kim will also be, so she'll do the whole presentation. You can write your questions in the chat box. We'll collect your questions and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation, because she might actually answer some of them throughout the presentation. All right, head over to you, Kim.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Anna. Hi, everyone. Anna, you've got the entries now. Anna, can I just check that you'll do admitting from the waiting room now, please? Beautiful. Hey, well, welcome, everyone. Happy Tuesday night. Thanks for joining us. While we've got everyone here, if you don't already have the gallery view open where you can see a bunch of tiny little faces, just for a moment, pop up to your view in the top right-hand corner and put it on gallery view. And if you don't have your camera on at the moment and you wouldn't mind popping your camera on just for a quick 5 minutes, that would be awesome. We are from all different corners of Victoria, and I just find it is so cool to be able to see everyone's beautiful, happy land care faces pop up and get that sense of togetherness for the beginning of a workshop like this. I'm going to kick off by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I come to you today. Here I'm up in Emerald in the beautiful Dandenong Ranges, and it's the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and the Bunurong Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. So 2 of the 5 nations of the Kulin Nations are represented here on this land. I want to deeply acknowledge the ancestors, the elders, and all of these incredible young people emerging as leaders at such a critical time. And I want to acknowledge those elders and the ancestors and the emerging leaders of the lands from which you all come today as well. I also want to take a brief moment to acknowledge all of the volunteers in the room. Volunteers are the lifeblood of this movement, and we would not be what we are without all of the incredible volunteers all over this state. So if you are a volunteer, give us a wave. Let's see all the volunteers. Awesome. How about committee members? How many committee members have we got here today? Give us a wave. Beautiful. Hey, keep waving if you happen to be on a couple of committees. Doesn't have to be Landcare, but just volunteer committees. Yeah, no surprises, right? We often find this, that people can be on multiple committees for multiple different causes. Do we have any Landcare facilitators here tonight? Give us a wave. Beautiful. Hey, special shout out to the Landcare facilitators. You are some of my favorite folks in the world. The work that you're doing is incredible, and it is such a varied role and so diverse, and you are Jack and Jills of all trades. So big acknowledgement to you guys tonight as well. And then what about other Landcare support staff? I feel like we often forget them, but Landcare has all kinds of different pieces of the pie coming together to make us as successful as what we are. So do we have any support staff here tonight, either from government, our LVI folks? I think I saw Andrew in here somewhere. Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. It is such a cool movement that we are a part of. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about volunteer recruitment. Lucky for me, it is my most favourite thing to talk about. And Landcare is one of my most favourite organisations. So I feel like I've already won the night. I am going to share my screen with you. Beautiful. So thanks so much to LVI for hosting this workshop. I'm going to kick off with a little bit about the state of volunteering and the trends that are happening at the moment. So a couple of critical trends. Bite-sized volunteering is on the rise. What I mean by bite-sized volunteering is really tiny snippets. So people might come in to volunteer for your organisation by just doing a flyer for you, or maybe they're writing a blog post, or maybe they're coming to a single event, a single planting perhaps. So bite-sized volunteering, and half of volunteering now is episodic. By episodic, this can be a little bit chunkier. It might be they're coming in for a project, or they're coming in to build you a website. But what we know is that people are looking for a smaller commitment than what they once did. Which is challenging for Landcare, right? If we have this very traditional way of, traditionally we really like our monthly working bees, for example. Remote volunteering continues to rise. We saw this go through the roof during COVID as we all moved online. And now it's kind of our everyday normal to work online. Look at us here having a webinar. We weren't having webinars like this 3 or 4 years ago. And so that remote volunteering, even post-COVID, we're seeing increasing more and more as more and more community organisations adapt to this online space and have it become their normal. We're also seeing a continuous rise in employee volunteering. Now, the stats out of Landcare Australia 3 years ago were alarming. Back then, we had 70% of businesses that now had a volunteering program for their employees of some type. 70%. I find this figure so shocking. And what we know is that that is still on the rise. So the other interesting thing about employee volunteering programs is that of the allocated hours, so the hours that businesses have allocated for their employees to volunteer within the community, only 50% of those hours get worked. So there's a couple of stories behind these statistics. One is that the employees are just not taking up the hours. So perhaps they're not interested in volunteering. Perhaps they don't understand the program enough. The other thing is that community organisations find it quite challenging to work with business and with corporates. And so there's a bit of a disconnect, but there is a whole bunch of hours there sitting there ready for the taking for those community organisations who are ready to adapt and step into this space. So we know that rates of volunteering declined during COVID quite rapidly. We saw pretty quickly a 50% drop once the pandemic started, and we have not yet returned to pre-COVID levels. So this graph is showing you the volunteering rates by age. The stats from December 2019 are the higher ones there in the green. And then the last, this poll, the ANU poll, was done in April 2022. So we can see that we haven't quite reached our pre-COVID levels. But what I thought was really interesting about looking at this by age is that we know that our retirees volunteer more hours in the community than those younger than them. But there's really not that much difference when you look from the age of 18 right up to 64. Sometimes it can feel like, you know, we're surrounded by all retirees and so other people aren't volunteering. But the stats tell us something very different. All right, let's have a look at a couple of different ways we can find people or we can recruit. So there's local recruitment. This is what we know best in Landcare, yeah? This is the residents, the workers, the people from your neighbourhood or town. There's another type of recruitment that's on the rise now, and this is looking for volunteers out of the pool of people who have some kind of affiliation with your area, with your institution, or with your cause. So they might have grown up in the local area, they might have gone to school there, quite often they take holidays there, but they feel a personal connection to your region and they want to be able to give back. I thought I'd also pop in a little bit around the barriers to volunteering. This is from some research done by Volunteering Australia. And I won't go through it in detail, but I think what's really interesting is that the top 3 barriers did not have time and unable to make a long-term commitment. So that's also associated with time. And the third one there, no one asked. Is that surprising? Because as committee members and as, you know, the people out there looking to recruit volunteers, it can often feel like we've asked everyone. There's no one left to ask. But on the other side of that, one of the biggest barriers to volunteering is that people are sitting there going, well, no one asked me if I wanted to get involved. The other one to note down there is preferred to give money instead of time, which is really common, right? So people might not have time to give, but they might be really interested in giving money to your cause. So the other ones there, gave enough time already. Hello, people on 4 committees. Had no interest, health problems or physically unable, did not know how to become involved, the financial cost of volunteering, and dissatisfied with a previous experience. So when we understand the barriers to volunteering, as community organisations, Landcare groups, Landcare networks, we're able to adapt and change the volunteer experience to address some of these barriers. So with any kind of behaviour change, you want to understand the barriers thoroughly, and then you want to work to reduce those barriers by design, so how you design your volunteering program, and then increase the benefits. And that's how we get behaviour change. The other thing I just want to touch on here is that final one where it says dissatisfied with a previous experience. So when you're asking people to volunteer for your organisation, they come with all of their preconceived ideas from every previous experience they've had. which means that sometimes they're not saying no to you as your organization, but they're saying no because they have a real fear of going back into a bad experience that they've had previously. And so it's good to have that in mind to make sure that when we're out there in our communities recruiting volunteers, that we're able to explain the experience they're going to have with us as something unique from an experience they may have had previously. All right. Now, before we go any further, not to put this sold out webinar of course, but I just want to take a moment to check in with, are we sure we want to recruit? So volunteer recruitment can sometimes feel like the golden bullet to all of our problems. I hear you. We live in busy times. Our committees are juggling so much. Our facilitators are juggling massive roles. People are busy and people are overloaded with work. And sometimes it feels like, oh, we just need more people, right? Like if we just had more people, we'd be okay. But the reality is that more volunteers means more expectations on your group, more diversity, which means that you have to allow for that diversity and adapt your activities for that diversity. It can sometimes mean more roles. It definitely means more admin, more coordination, and more work. So if burnout is your issue, recruitment is unlikely to be the answer. Because by embarking on recruitment, you're actually creating more work. And you may not actually be resourced to take on that work. And the process of recruiting new volunteers is actually a whole bunch of work as well. So recruiting volunteers is extra work. And then when we bring these new volunteers in, that's extra work. So I would just encourage you as committees to really have those conversations around, are we sure we want to recruit? Sometimes we can get a little bit tied up in this kind of obsession with growth, like we have to get bigger, we have to get better, we have to do more. But some of the best Landcare groups are those Landcare groups that are, 5 or 10 friends. They meet every month. They've been tacking away at their own little plot and they're having a really great time. They really enjoy each other's company and everything is fine and easy. But when they embark on the journey of recruitment, it kind of can overcomplicate things. And sometimes that changes the dynamic of the group. So recruitment is awesome, but it's not for everyone. And every year, I think we have around 600 Landcare groups in Victoria. Every year, a few more come on. Every year, a couple go into hiatus or fold. And that's actually just a natural life cycle of a community group, that we go with the momentum of the community. And sometimes groups do fold, and sometimes it's okay for that to happen. So hopefully we haven't lost too many people there, Anna. They've all left now. They're like, we don't want to recruit. See you later. If you do want to recruit, well then stick with us. Let's have a look at how we can embark upon that journey with a bit more ease. So there's 2 types of recruitment, passive and active. Passive recruitment is where you put the call out and you wait for people to come. And this can be really great. It can be really successful. And this was the way it was always traditionally done, but it can be really demotivating way to go. So, you might have a committee member that's put a bunch of work into a flyer and they go and they put it up all around town on all the notice boards. And then they sit back and wait for the phone to ring. And they wait. And they've put all this effort in and they're waiting for the people to come flooding. But the reality is that that rarely happens. And so for that person who's put all that effort in, it can feel really demotivating. It can feel like no one cares. It can feel like they've wasted their time, energy, and effort. What I really pitch more is this active process of recruitment. It's where you initiate conversations and you take the opportunities as they arise. There are methods of passive recruitment that still work. So last year, 2022, there was 25,000 advertisements on Seek for volunteer roles. The majority of these roles got filled. So putting up your role advertisements or your volunteer advertisements on Seek is really powerful. It can be a really good way to go. So as long as you're using those avenues in a way that's effective, it can be helpful. But the method we're going to talk about and focus on today is this active method. It's where we're initiating conversations and taking those opportunities as they arise. And this is the 5A method of volunteer recruitment. So it's 5 steps. It's going to break it down into a really succinct process for you. And I'll just pop in the chat. You don't need this now, but I have made a little handout for you that has a worksheet with each of these on it. And I'll just pop a link in the chat. I did just launch a new website today, so I'm hoping everything kind of works. But if not, I'll also give this document to Anna to mail out to you following the webinar. So 5 steps. Step 1 is activity. Step 2, audience. Then we have ask, action, allies. And that's what we're going to spend the next little while stepping through. Activity. Okay, so what are you actually recruiting people to do? This may seem really like a no-brainer, but you would be surprised how many organizations miss this step. You want to think about your group and where you're heading. So you might have a business plan, you might have a strategic plan, you might have an action plan. These plans work like the GPS in your car. So in a strategic plan, you have your vision. Your vision is your destination. That's your true north. It's the beautiful, fabulous world that you're working towards creating. Then your GPS is going to steer you on the fastest route possible to your destination. So your GPS is your strategic plan. Your vision is your destination. Your GPS is your strategic plan. Now, sometimes we veer off. We might have, an awesome new volunteer who comes along and they've got great passions and specific interests, and you might end up doing something that's off your strategic plan. The reality is that then you've veered off path. Now, the genius lady in the GPS, or the genius lady as my kids like to call her, she will then direct you back on course when you veer off course and put you back heading towards your destination. So that's what your strategic plan does. Your recruitment plan needs to link to your strategic plan or to your other plans, because otherwise it's just taking you off course. And before you know it, you kind of moved further away from your vision. You're not making progress towards your vision. And that's not motivating for any volunteer. That's not motivating for anyone if you're not making progress towards the vision. So any recruitment plan should absolutely link to your existing plans and not be something that's standalone. I also just want to say that plans can seem like these big giant things. Like I know when we make strategic plans, it's a whole day workshop, follow up, sometimes more. But these plans, these recruitment plans, can be really simple. 1 page. What is the activity you're going to undertake? So in this step, we want to get super targeted and really specific about what we want done. Look at the projects, look at the tasks, look at the roles. And in terms of roles, you almost want to be breaking those down into tasks as well. So what are the tasks that it takes to do these roles? And I think that Anna's going to touch on this in some upcoming webinars as well. There's one on roles and responsibilities that LVI is running. And then we're also going to do a follow-up from this volunteer recruitment one specifically on succession planning as well. So let's have a think about what are some of the common target activities. We might be recruiting committee members. Why? For succession planning. We want to share the load. Maybe we just want fresh ideas. Things are feeling a bit dry and boring. Maybe we want to access some new audiences. Another one is we recruit for working bees or events. The numbers are dropping off, but we might still want to keep organised working bees or event days for members. We might recruit residents as members to educate. This avenue for information dispersal, we might be looking to change a specific behaviour. We might be recruiting specific farmers to ensure that we've got the landscape scale projects covered. We might recruit someone to develop our website, someone to help us know where to start. You might recruit someone different to do the copywriting, someone to design and build. So there's multiple different steps in developing a website, and you might recruit several volunteers to undertake that task. You might think that all of this is starting to sound like a whole lot of work. And so maybe you just recruit one person to be your volunteer recruiter. So you recruit a recruiter, you recruit engagement people, and those people go out, they run stalls and stands at markets, they do public speaking, they do events, they do letterbox drops, door knocks, or maybe they attend workshops like this and develop plans for your group to recruit their volunteers. And in that handout, I actually have added a job description for a volunteer recruiter, because that's one of the top questions I get asked after these workshops is, well, that sounds fabulous, but what does that person look like? So there's an actual job description in there of a person who was recruited as a volunteer to recruit volunteers. Beautiful. So we've figured out what we want to do, who we want to recruit, and why. And once we know what the gaps are and what our purpose for recruiting is, only then can we begin to even understand where to start and talk about how to go about it. So that takes us to step 2. This is audience. This is where we go from understanding what we need done to understanding who might be the types of people who would take on that activity and how we might actually access them. So our aim here, because it's an active recruitment process, is to have one-on-one conversations. We want to make it really individual and get actual names and contact details. So as opposed to where we're just kind of putting the call out and going, hey, Beechworth Landcare needs volunteers. This time we're getting really specific and we're having individual conversations. So what are the types of people that we might explore, and what are their motivations? So types of people that we're looking at. Maybe it's students who are looking to build resumes, retirees who are looking to give back, mums and dads with preschool aged children who are looking to contribute to their community. It might be a work placement for a high school student, businesses and corporates with CSR goals, maybe skilled professionals who are looking to contribute to a cause or to give back, or people who are fired up for change in the community. So if we can appeal to people's motivations from the moment of recruitment and in the induction and throughout their volunteering journey, it will benefit the whole organisation and actually everyone in it. This little guy, this is a photo of the first time I ever saw a koala in the wild. And it was such a moment that stayed with me and motivated me to get involved with koala rehabilitation. So that was my motivation. That was a moment that held emotion for me. And it was my motivation for getting involved in a cause. And so when we tap into those motivations, it means that, people have a much more fulfilling experience, a much more fulfilling volunteer journey. So on those motivations, let's just do a little recap about why people join groups. You might have seen this before, but it's really important. If we can understand why people join groups, then we can adapt our programs to be able to address these motivating factors. So it might be to meet new people. It might be for a sense of belonging. Like, humans are really tribal creatures, right? We all have that desire to belong. And community organisations are so incredible for delivering that sense of belonging for people. It might be because of belief in the cause. People might want to learn new skills. They might be resume building. So, young students who want to come and have an experience and get something on their resume to help them with employment. The employment pathway. Actually, there was a really incredible presentation delivered at the National Landcare Conference last year by Gabrielle Stacey and Peter Dalton from Fern Creek Landcare, not Ferny Creek Landcare, Fern Creek Landcare in Dudley, New South Wales. There's a little 5-minute YouTube video
Kim,
online. Yeah.
I actually got a link to share that video at the end. So I'll add it to the chat.
Awesome. I highly recommend taking a look. I was in that presentation, and this pair, they are a formidable couple, and it's something so interesting to look at. What I love about Peter Dalton was the way his experience of bringing young people into the organisation. For him, it was as much about growing and learning from them. And his whole approach to it was just so beautiful. So I highly recommend taking a look at that video. But the other really interesting thing that came out of that project, I think it was around half a dozen or a dozen of those volunteers. So they went from maybe 20 right up to 400, a pool of 400 volunteers. And half a dozen of those actually gained employment within the projects because they were able to grow so big. And so that's such an incredible offering for those young people. So that's employment pathway. Testimonials. Sometimes you have local businesses, maybe new business owners who will volunteer because they need to get testimonials to be able to work in the local community. Let's never forget, people like to have fun. For social activities to make a difference. Legacy. So legacy is really important. People have an innate need to kind of leave a legacy, to leave something behind. People want to give back. Maybe it's a sense of obligation. So after the State of the Environment report, which was, harrowing last year, there was a real spike in environmental volunteering. People felt this sense of obligation, this sense of urgency to make change. Some people volunteer because they like to be needed, they like to feel useful, and sometimes for fitness and health. If anyone has any other reasons why people join groups, I'd love to hear them in the chat. Go ahead and pop them in. On the other side of this, it's good to understand why people leave as well. So we put all this time, energy, and effort, we get them through the door, and then sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes they didn't feel like they belonged. They didn't feel like they fitted in. And that's okay, right? We should be okay with that because every group is different and every group is not for everyone. Sometimes they feel like their time was wasted. If they haven't given a meaningful contribution, they don't have this sense of, like I've achieved something. They don't feel valued. They're not given responsibility. So sometimes we can really go gently with our new recruits and we go, we'll just give them this little task or we won't ask them to do much. But if people aren't able to get that sense of achievement, they will just dwindle off and not come back. Maybe they didn't feel welcome, the expectations weren't clear, they can't see success. So we all want to be a part of successful things, right? If you're volunteering your time, energy, and effort for something that's not moving towards that vision, that's not achieving anything, it doesn't feel good. It's not enjoyable. And so your motivation will just peter out. They might not have enough time, or they might want to have enough time. AGM comes and they're like, oh, okay, I'll do it. If no one else is doing it, all right, I'll do it. And before they know it, they're overcommitted. They've got too much on their plate and they start to, wane and they don't stick around. Sometimes the ask is too big, right? So that ask needs to be manageable. It needs to be something that can be achievable. Maybe they can't contribute what they like to do or what they're good at. The priorities for your organization might not be in an area they enjoy. They feel like they've done what they come to achieve. So, that case of they've come for employment pathways or to, build their resume. And then after a certain amount of time, it's done. And they feel that sense of achievement. And so they don't necessarily need to stick around long term. And I think this is something we can really check in with as groups and as committees. It's okay. We can be okay with that if someone's time has folded. I think we talk about retention a lot. And often in Landcare, we're like, we don't want people to leave. We want to retain them long term. But sometimes it's run its course. And the more okay we can be with that kind of people come and go, then, the more energy it brings to the group. Or their motivator for joining is no longer present. They've got what they needed and now they're done. I'm just going to check the chat. If anyone has anything else to add, feel free to jump in. Did we have any additional ones? Oh, yeah, mentoring. Yeah, good one, Ellen. And sharing equipment. Yes, John. Yep, sharing equipment, getting access to taught on sticks and all of the incredible resources that Landcare groups have. Yeah, that's a really important one. People also join groups for empowerment. Yeah. Enlightened self-interest. Yeah, I love that. That's gorgeous, Paulus. Awesome. All right. So in this second step in the audience, so we've got the activity, then we go to who is the audience. So who might be the types of people that might do an activity or a role like this? And we want to think about how we might gain access to that audience. So I've got a few examples here, bear with me. So let's say our activity that we're recruiting for is a secretary. Who might be the possible audience? And I'm not saying this is always the audience. I'm saying you need somewhere to start to get targeted. So maybe a retired administrator. Maybe it's someone who has been an admin assistant in a school, for example. You know, who are the types of people that might be good at and enjoy a secretary role? And how are we going to access these people? So if you take nothing else from this presentation tonight, this is the one thing to take: volunteer resource centres. So your volunteer resource centre, there is a whole bunch of them scattered throughout Victoria. They're a federally funded resource that exists purely to match volunteers with community organisations. So I worked as a community engagement manager in a volunteer resource after I was a Landcare facilitator, actually. And so you can imagine there I was working for Landcare as a facilitator, and we're always on the hunt for volunteers, right? Volunteer recruitment, a massive part of our job, a huge part of our conversations, every committee member, where are all the volunteers? And then I find myself in this role in a volunteer resource centre, and on average, 50 people walked through that door every single week looking for volunteer roles. There they were, walking through the front door saying, I have time to give. Can you help me find somewhere to volunteer, please? Like, incredible. There they are. And one of the reason I've put the access for this audience, for the retired administrators here, is because one of the big cohorts that would come to the Volunteer Resource Centre were forwarded to us through Centrelink. So mutual obligation, people who retire younger than the pension age are required to do 11 or 12 hours, maybe volunteer work every week to access that pension earlier. And so we would have maybe 20 of these people walk through the front door saying, I have 11 hours a week to give to an organisation. Can you help me find a great organisation? So yeah, extraordinary. Tap into those volunteer resources. They're a great source for training and all things volunteer. All right, let's move on to the next example. So you might be looking for someone to put together a social media plan for you. Social media these days, it's kind of a must-do, but no one's got time for it. So maybe you might recruit a volunteer to get your social media up and running. Who might be the possible audience for that? Maybe a communications project. So you could tap into the high school principal of the local high school and see if there's some project that happens with that cohort and whether you can tee something up as a partnership with those school students. You might be looking for someone to film your stories. You're having all of these great event days and doing some amazing project work, and you're doing great work with the local farmers. And so you want to capture these moments. Maybe that audience might be a film student. So you go directly to the university lecturer or to the department. I actually have an interview next week with a university who have contacted me about potentially running a project for a bunch of marketing students. So there's these really great opportunities where this is a group of marketing students that are going to do a group project, and they're looking for someone to partner with to deliver that project. So there's heaps of cool stuff happening in universities, and they can be a really great source of volunteers. And if you can give, these students a really meaningful experience, it can be great partnership and get really good outcomes. We might just want to plant some trees. So potentially an audience, it can be so varied for this, but what if we just say, for the sake of this plan, that we're going to look for local families? So how can we access the local families? Maybe it's through school principals, maybe it's through the local community house, maybe it's through door knocks. And I know door knocks can be a bit controversial. People go, whoa, no way. But it is still a really effective way to access particularly new residents in the area, or specifically if you're looking to target certain properties for your landscape plans. Maybe the activity you're looking to do is get a hallway painted, or, something done to your tool shed. The audience for that might be corporate. And so you might go to local business or big business. One of the best experiences I've had with corporate volunteering is through the NAB corporate volunteers. Has anyone used those, the NAB volunteers? Let me know in the chat if you have. But I had a fantastic experience where a guy who worked at NAB came and volunteered to do an environmental audit of the business I was working in. And so he came, this was a to-do thing on my to-do list for maybe 8 months beforehand. And he took on the project. He'd done something similar with the buildings in Melbourne that the NAB offices were in. And he came to our little community organisation and did an audit of the whole building and wrote a report, submitted the report to the board. And it was all done in like 3 weeks. And he did an incredible job. So perhaps really succinct projects like that are great for corporates. I think often we think about corporate volunteering as being, huge groups of people coming to plant trees, and it can be a really big mission. Like, it can be a difficult project to coordinate, but those one-on-one jobs, they can be really awesome too. All right, so that takes us to step 3, the ask. I might just stop sharing for a moment and see how, I want to see that you're all still with me, that we're all okay, and check in with Anna if there's any questions happening in the chat.
Yes, there's some. Do you want to get to them now, Kim?
Maybe we could throw 1 or 2 in.
Okay, so Bruce, it comes back to the start from the stats. Do you know the stats for regional employee volunteering?
Regional. I don't think I've seen stats that split it from urban to regional.
And then Beck Bowles, I think she's just leaving now, but Becca, this will be recorded. What if you, in this, I think this is very common to a lot of people, what if you have a lot of members in Landcare, but only on average 5 to 8 people turn up?
Yeah, it's a really common thing, isn't it? We can often have big lists of contact details and big lists of members, but then we just don't have the active members, and that can feel really frustrating. I think that there's a few things on this. We're going to come to the last step, which is allies, is going to answer some of this, because people like to give in different ways. Not all people want to be volunteers, even though they want to be associated with your organisation. So we'll come back to the major part of that. But this next section actually might be pretty good for that as well, because it's also about how we ask. Like, how do we engage these audiences? And if we go back to those motivating factors, everyone is motivated by something different, right? So we have, you know, a whole bunch of people. What have we got? 66 people in this room right now. And all of us would have different motivations for being involved with Landcare, or a different combination of motivations. So maybe because we're really busy, maybe because we don't want to necessarily have a whole bunch of admin, we kind of just make everything very simplified sometimes. But everyone's different. And so all those people on your list, if you could start engaging with them and having a real conversation with them, this is coming back to the active recruitment and finding out who they are, what they're interested, how they might contribute, and what they might like to do to contribute, that changes the game, right? Because suddenly we're not saying, this is who we are, come and do what we're asking you to do. We're saying, this is who we are. Who are you? What have you got to offer? What do you want to offer? What motivates you to get involved with this cause? And how can we adapt to be able to incorporate that into the group? Sometimes it's really simple and really easy. Sometimes people, you know, maybe they're getting involved because they want to make a difference, and they want to, you know, they feel really compelled because of the state of the environment, right? But they're not seeing anything like that coming from your communications. So they're not going to get excited to get involved. And I know we're all a bit surveyed out, and you don't want to hear me say, survey your people, but sometimes just putting on the end of your email something like, let me know what you'd like to, maybe not let me know what you'd like to do to contribute. Let me know what interests you about, you know, sustainable agriculture at the moment, and starting to get email responses as a starting point to understand what it is that individuals are looking for. I don't know if that answers it. It felt like a long way around. Any others there, Anna?
Yes, do you reckon, David's asking, do you reckon people read emails sent out to members and friends? Do they read newsletters attached to emails, or do they just flick past and delete them?
Do you know what's so interesting? I always feel like no one reads emails, and that everyone is just, you know, living in inboxes full of spam. But the data tells us something different. The data tells us that email communication is still the most effective way to reach out to people. And the open rates for community organizations are much higher than for any business. So your list is your gold. Do not stop utilizing that list. They want to hear from you. If they don't want to hear from you, they'll unsubscribe, or they'll ask you to remove them. And, you know, I do that quite regularly because I feel like I live in a spam-filled inbox. But yeah, email is still king when it comes to communication, believe it or not.
And then, Kim, just in regarding to corporate volunteering, how far will corporate volunteers travel? Asks Nick.
Yeah, I think it varies. It varies organization to organization. I want to say that when I'm talking about corporate volunteers, I'm also talking about your local businesses as well. Corporates don't have to be the big guys. You don't have to play in the big ANZ game. You know, you can simplify this too. You can talk to your local businesses. You can go and speak to the township groups and speak to the actual businesses directly and see how they might like to contribute.
And Brian is also asking, also thinks a common to some groups. They struggle to get a quorum at the meetings where decisions need to be made. Any suggestions?
Yeah, go to a really targeted and planned approach. If you need to recruit committee members, this passive way of recruiting, it rarely works. It's really demotivating. But when you go to a really active method like the 5A method and really get planned and targeted approach to your recruitment, you will get bigger results. So I know sometimes this feels a bit weird because you're all already volunteers and you're all already doing amazing things in your community. But imagine someone contacted you and said, you know, hey, John, I know that you have been the local real estate agent for the last 30 years. You are so connected to this community. I know that you're a busy guy, but you have a set of skills that would be so valuable to us. And we're wondering whether you would consider coming and contributing to our group. People feel such a sense of, you know, that's amazing to think that you are wanted by someone that much. Like that someone would come and contact you. And look, you're not always going to get a yes. That's the reality. There's a bit of a numbers game going on here. But getting really targeted about what it is that you need done, who would be the types of people who might be good at that, refining down what would motivate them. So we're not just talking about what they're going to give to us, right? We're talking about what they're going to get as well, because volunteer relationships need to be mutually beneficial. Like, it might be controversial, right? But all giving is selfish. And I don't mean selfish in a bad way. But if we're all driven by internal feedback loops, right? If you're not getting something out of your experience, you're not going to stick around. So if we can plan to give mutually beneficial experiences from the beginning, then we're going to be more successful. So in terms of getting a quorum, I mean, it's more about having the right people in the roles, or maybe reducing the roles, right? Maybe the ask is too big. Which brings us really nicely dovetailing into the ask. So how we ask people to participate makes a difference to whether we get the answer of a yes or a no. When I deliver this volunteer recruitment training in a classroom, it's usually a day long, and the ask is the biggest chunk. So I'm going to give you the short version tonight because of time, but the three key things are: how do we structure the ask, the mindset you have, and then that leads into the language that you use. So bearing in mind that we're talking about an active form of recruitment here, so we're having one-on-one conversations, we're speaking to people about the role that we have available. So how we structure the ask, there's two really simple ways. The first one I've already mentioned, it's what will they give? What will they get? What will they give? What will they get? The other one, and this works really well for if you have a specific project. So I don't know, you might be rehabilitating an area of bushland or habitat. And so what is the problem? What is the solution? And what does the supporter do? Problem, solution, supporter. What's the problem? What's the solution that Landcare has come up with? And what do I, as the volunteer, contribute to that? Make sense? The next one is around the mindset that you have. And the mindset that you have will lead you into the language you use. Now, let's remember that sometimes in Landcare, we feel like we've asked the whole community. Where in regional communities, a lot of the time, our organisations are small. We feel like we have a really small group or a small pool of potential volunteers. And we feel like we've been asking for 10 years, right? We've asked everyone. There's no one left. And so when we're coming from that place, that comes through in the way that we ask. So if you believe you can or believe you can't, either way you're right. Who said that? Henry Ford. So our beliefs, our internal beliefs, drive our behaviours. What we believe to be true will come through in our behaviour. So, for example, if I believe that I've asked everyone in the town and there are no new volunteers, when I go around, my behaviour or the way I ask is going to reflect that. So we really need to look at what's bubbling below the surface when we ask. And quite often, this is what we find. We find that we have a fear of getting told no, or that we're expecting a no. We've had so many no's before, now we just expect it. Often we feel like it's a really big ask. Like these problems are so big and we're asking this massive thing of people. Or we might feel like we're inconveniencing someone, or the belief that we're taking something away. We're taking their time away, their precious time. But the reality is we need to reframe this, and we need to check in on this stuff as committees as well, because sometimes this is all unconscious, right? We don't even realize we're doing it. And if you're hearing things in your committee, like young people don't care about the environment, or no one cares about the environment, no, young people don't want to volunteer, we've asked everyone. It could be true that you have this bubbling belief below the surface that is spreading throughout your group and influencing your ability to recruit new volunteers. So I think the greatest story I have around this is that, so before Landcare, I worked for Greenpeace for 10 years. And I worked here in Australia, but also overseas. And for 10 years, we were like, where are all the old people? That old people don't care about the environment. Why don't they volunteer? Like, we need more old people to get involved. And our average age of a volunteer was like 23, 24. And we looked everywhere. As volunteer recruiters, as fundraisers, you know, we wanted the old people to be involved because old people have more stability, because they have more time, they give more money, they're more reliable. And so for 10 years, this was my volunteer recruitment game. Where are all the old people? And so in 2009, the Black Saturday bushfires happened, and I decided to come back to Australia with the direct intention to work in fire recovery. I'm from the Yarra Valley. Lots of my family and friends were really deeply affected. And so wanting to work in fire recovery of the land, of course, I ended up with Landcare, and I was in a Landcare facilitator role. And before long, I started hearing, where are all the young people? Young people don't care about the environment. Why aren't the young people volunteering? And I was like, wow, this is so interesting. So the average age of our Landcare network at that time was, I think we were at about 60. And so it was just so interesting. And what I realized was that it's all perspective, right? It's all what you're surrounded by. It's all what you believe. And this was where the original Landcare for Singles program came from, because we knew that young people cared about the environment. We knew that, young people volunteered. We knew this was the case, but what we were witnessing wasn't actually what was true, right? And so we created a program that specifically appealed to a younger audience with the avenue of, singles. And we recruited 180 volunteers in 3 events, just like that. 95% of those volunteers had never had anything to do with Landcare before. And so what we really need is to reframe, to check in on what the beliefs are in our committees, what are those words that are being said, and reframe it. And remember that this is not a personal favour we are asking of people, but it is an invitation to purpose and to contribute to organisations. People want to find meaningful contribution. And as we know from that experience in the volunteer resource centre, many of them don't know where to look. There is an enormous number of people who are out there wanting to volunteer, wanting to contribute, and they're looking for us too. So that brings us to action. This is the final step. So we've figured out who we want to recruit. We've figured out the audience. We've given them a great ask. And now we've got to get them to show up on the day. So this is about the new recruits. They need to take meaningful action right away. So we need to plan for this, right? What are we going to assign them to? What is their first task? Because those first impressions matter. Can they succeed? Is it manageable? So you recruit a new treasurer, and the treasurer rocks up to the other treasurer's house who's been around for 10 years and gets handed these folders of papers. Here you go. Here's the books. It's not manageable. They're going to become overwhelmed. We need to think about how we can help people to succeed. And really, like, as long as those papers are stored somewhere, does that treasurer have to fill their house with them? Also, is it meaningful? So this goes back to that point earlier around sometimes we can tread really carefully around new recruits and, not want to give them too much, but we really want to give them meaningful action. If a new recruit ends up at an event and they don't necessarily know what to do, they can't just jump in and find something in the way that, perhaps the other committee members can. And they end up with something like doing dishes. If they're doing dishes, they're not walking away feeling like they've contributed to the event, to the outcome, to the organisation. So saying welcome isn't enough. We need more. I love this photo so much. It's like, it's so Landcare, like, farmers meeting farmers over fences. So we want to think about, as a group, how do we welcome new people? Because those first impressions really count. So a really good example of this is if you have a new recruit who's showing up, their first action with the organisation is coming to a meeting. It's always a really good idea to keep an eye out for them and have one person go meet them out in the car park and walk them in and introduce them to everyone, because groups are really nerve-wracking and a lot of people really struggle to walk into groups of people. Their heart starts racing, they start feeling really uncomfortable, and then, they kind of walk in and fumble over their words because their nerves get the better of them. But what if we were to go out there and one-on-one greet them and say hello and let those nerves settled before we brought them into the group? And then how do we involve and incorporate them into the group? So things like keeping a check on, you know, how much, I've lost my words, you know, like abbreviations, the language that we use. Sometimes we talk in this other Landcare language, talking about, you know, DELP and LVI, and we all know what's going on, but anyone new doesn't know the language. And so that kind of conversation can just like that make someone feel like they don't belong. And that's it. You've lost them right there and then, because you used all these acronyms that they don't understand. How do we nurture new relationships? You know, how do they want to be communicated with? Do they want to be emailed? Do they want to have someone call them afterwards and say, hey, thanks for showing up to the meeting last night. Just wondering if you had any questions or what you think. But really thinking through that process of how do we bring someone in? You know, if we are a group of 6 people who are tight, or 3 people who are tight, and, you know, we've got a president who's been in his role for a lengthy amount of time, like how does someone crack into that group? What is their experience like? And of course, have we covered our legal obligations? Because quite often people come onto committees and they're like, oh yeah, I'll help out, no worries. But they have no idea that they actually have some legal responsibilities in there. And so that's, you know, that's on us as committees. We need to make sure that we've communicated that somehow. And really importantly, is the group willing to make the changes necessary to incorporate new people? So this comes back to that thing of sometimes groups, without realizing it, can be a bit cliquey. And it can feel like an experience, like you're back in the schoolyard for some people. People bring their whole selves to our events, you know, all of their past experiences come along with them. And so sometimes we do need to ask the question of, excuse me, are we willing to make changes to incorporate new people? Because bringing new people into our group means we need to adapt. It means we need to cater for more diversity, for more motivations, for more ideas. And sometimes that can feel a bit challenging. All right, I'm going to fly through this last section so that we've got a little chance for a couple of questions. So the final one is allies. And this is where I invite you to start shifting from a space of volunteer retention to a space of creating allies, because we want to think now about lifetime value. We are playing the long game. This country needs us and needs us to play a long game. Landcare has been around and is an incredible movement, and we need to continue into the future because we know how effective this movement is. So think about all the ways a supporter will grow and change over time, and how their involvement within the group shifts throughout their life. So how they might come across Landcare, you know, in school through junior Landcare. Perhaps they get to university and they're involved with Intrepid. Maybe as a young family, they have no time anymore, but, you know, they have some money and they want to contribute money instead. And then how that shifts and changes as they become empty nesters and then retirees. So that people's lives shift and change, like even within these kind of cohorts, there's a whole bunch of change that happens through our lives. And so can we be okay with people contributing in different ways and with the way they contribute shifting over time? So there's plenty of ways we lend a hand, right? We might volunteer in different ways in multiple roles over time. We might donate money. We might give gifts in kind, you know, maybe we become a local business owner and we contribute with, tools or you know, cakes for events, catering. We might advocate on behalf of the organisation. And no matter what our experience is, we're probably going to go and tell 20 people about that experience, whether it's good or bad. We might promote, so we might not be actively involved, but we might share things on Facebook or through social media. We might recommend that our friends and family get involved in the group. So this comes back to that question of like, we have all of these people on our list, but we only have a small amount of active volunteers. So what can we do to engage those people who maybe volunteering's not for them right now? Maybe we can adapt our activities to appeal to them better. Maybe we can not adapt our activities, but adapt our messaging to appeal to them better. But maybe we can also give them other ways to get involved in the organisation other than volunteering, and know that that is going to pay off long term, because maybe when they get a bit older or have a bit more time, that type of volunteering will be more appropriate for them at that time of their life. Fun fact on donations, and this is a really quick and easy thing you can do on your membership forms, is if you give 3 tiers of membership, so maybe one is, I don't know, $15, one's $50, and one's $100, psychologically people will always go for the middle one. If you give 3 options, they go for the middle. It's so interesting. All right, so quick recap. Activity, this is deciding what it is we're recruiting for and putting a bit of time and effort into that, really unpacking the tasks, the projects, the roles. And the next step is the audience, who might be the likely people who might do those types of roles, looking at getting one-on-one conversations. So you want to get actual names and contact details of people who might be the type of people that you want to talk to, or might get you access to those types of people. Ask, and this is really where we talked about the mindset. Action, getting people to take meaningful action right away and ensuring that what we give them is manageable, that they can walk away with a sense of achievement, and that those first impressions are really strong. And then finally, allies. So thinking about volunteer retention more as creating allies who stick around long term and contribute to our organisations in different ways. So that wraps up that. If I will say, if you want to go deeper, there is a digital course on my website around this model, which goes in a lot deeper. And there's a coupon code there, LVI webinar. If you're interested in purchasing that coupon at checkout will give you 50% off. And I'll just keep that there for like the next, I don't know, month. All right, I am going to unshare my screen. And I think we might have time for a couple of questions.
Yeah, we do. Just going to answer quickly here to Bron about does LVI have resources to take volunteers through what the legal responsibilities of becoming a Landcare member are? Well, we're actually running a webinar about this, the responsibilities and roles of committee members. So yeah, we'll definitely be sharing a lot of information about this, as well as some written materials. So yeah, they'll be coming soon. I'll let you know at the end of this workshop. Yeah, and if anyone has got any questions for Kim, please go ahead, raise your hand or unmute yourself, or pop them in the chat, yeah, as you might feel comfortable. Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes for questions, if that's okay. There was a lot of good comments as well in the chat, and none of this will be lost. I will record all of this, and I will be putting actually a pamphlet together about good ways of recruiting volunteers. Any questions? I'm sure there'll be some questions or comments. We'll take comments as well if you have something important to add.
Do we have a brave person that's ready to unmute? I'm sure everyone's sick of my voice by now. They want to hear one of yours.
Oh, and so we've got here, Bron has also asked, also are Landcare groups able to... Oh, thanks. Yeah, that'll be good, Brad.
I'll even put my video on there. How's that for being brave? I know there's all sorts of rules around who can receive donations and how and what the obligations of, mostly the money we have is through grants and things like that. But I just had never thought of, offering donations as a way for people to engage if they can no longer contribute to the working bees, for instance. So, can you just talk us through whether or not that's an option and, how it would be auspiced and all that kind of stuff?
I think Landcare LVI has some great, exciting stuff happening in this space at the moment, yeah?
Yes, so to receive donations, you have to be, you have to have a DGR status, which most groups don't because it is more compliance. But actually, LVI, Landcare Victoria, has just started very recently a donate page button on our website where groups can actually, you can contact us as a group and you can register to receive donations. There's a small fee just to cover our admin fee. But you can definitely go through our group and visit our website and you'll find the page there for members with donations. Yeah, and I can share the link later as well in my follow-up email if anyone's interested. Ellen?
Okay, thank you.
That's okay. Thank you, Bron. That's a good question. Ellen also asked diversity. How can this be increased to include minority groups in the community?
Yeah, so this is where the 5A model comes in really well because you're actually deciding who the audience is that you want to approach to undertake a role. And so, if there is a specific audience that you're looking for, maybe you could even work that step backwards and go, okay, who's the audience we want to attract and what type of roles might be interesting to them? And then you're looking at, okay, how do we actually access these communities? So when you're stepping through a plan in this way, it makes it really easy because you're thinking through all of these aspects before you're actually picking up the phone or taking any action. And that means you can get super targeted and really think through the barriers and benefits and how you're going to appeal to these different audiences.
I'm just going to say something quickly because I've noticed a few people are logging out, but we still got another half an hour with very good, some really good and positive case studies. They'll share some important information with you. So don't move.
And the reason they're so important, right, is that I don't know if I'm qualified to be a young person anymore, you guys. I mean, it depends who you talk to, but these days I don't think I can talk on behalf of the young people. So Intrepid's doing amazing stuff, and Annette and Amy have some great wisdom to share that I am no longer qualified to give.
So we've got Carrie. She's just raised her hand to ask a question. Do you want to go ahead, Carrie?
Thank you, Anna. My question is probably more to Landcare Victoria than to Kim directly. A number of my groups are struggling to get and keep treasurers because of the workload. I know Kim touched on dividing up that job. I do think coming up with a way of managing membership for the larger groups that was a Landcare across all of Landcare Victoria would be fantastic. So those groups with 140 members, where the treasurer has to sit down and go, there's the bank statement, and I think that's them. That's really painful. So that's problem A. Problem B, if we could do that, and then we could have a system that we could sort of hand them that says this is how you manage project funding or grant funding, that would be fantastic for some of my groups. So
Yeah. So, Kerry, with the first question, sorry, I just had a blank.
membership.
Membership. On our last workshop, fundraising workshop, someone came up with the idea that you can actually do membership lists through the SurveyMonkey. There's a small fee attached to it, but it's actually not a bad idea to, it's a very easy way to collect memberships and data, and you are still able to manually introduce, members, some of your older members might not be happy about going that way, so you can manually do it, but it just does all that work for you. All you got to do is go to SurveyMonkey and download the data they've collected. So that's one way. But that's definitely something that it's difficult to most members.
I'm sure we could find that someone has a solution for this. Interestingly, Kerry, I had the exact same conversation with Landcare Networks in the south of New South Wales just yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure someone's got a really comprehensive solution to this that we've got to find.
I know that it's Nicole Middleton from Wood End Landcare here, but I'm also with the Narina and Tarwin Valley Landcare group down in South Gippsland. And I know in West Gippsland, they've been using a membership application. I don't know about it, but when I signed up for that Landcare group, I went through this online app thing, which they were trialling down there through the CMA, I think. Know more about it at there was an article about it in one of the Landcare magazines that came out.
And I don't want to railroad the conversation, but I've been really pushing that thanks to that article in that Landcare magazine, and our block seems to be our Catchment Management Authority. My feeling is that the South Gippsland one of Catchment Management have taken on some responsibility that Northeast Catchment don't want to do. So that seems to be our block with that. Yeah,
I'll take that as a comment. We'll do with the grant funding. So we do provide some support there at LVI. If you're unsure about something, we can support you with your grant application. But there's also a theme for another webinar or potentially workshop that we will consider in the future. So thanks for your input. And Paul's been waiting for a while to ask a question. Paul, do you want to unmute yourself? Paul, we can't hear you. You have to unmute. Click the unmute button.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there you
go. Good discussion, and great insight that Greenpeace's young people and Landcare's old people, and looking at the faces on the screen, I suspect that hasn't changed a lot. And I think that's one of the challenges that we face, and there's a little bit of sort of chicken and egg thing. So it'd be great to recruit young people, but I'm not too sure that what we have on offer appeals to them, given our membership is primarily older and primarily landowners and more interested about things that can be done on their property. And it'd be good to get some information on what are the young people interested in, because we don't have them in our group, so it's hard to ask them. So if anybody's able to share that and say, these are the things that young people are interested in, then we can arrange some activities. And when we have that conversation with them, we can say, this is what's in it for you, because I suspect at the moment, there's not a lot in it for them.
Well, Paul, there's our next two presentations, that's exactly what they're going to do. So stay tuned for more. We got John, John, you've got time for a very quick question to finish it off, and we'll move on.
Yeah, we had the situation with one of our local Landcare groups in our network, Chum Creek, couldn't find a treasurer. And what I was able to do is to introduce a treasurer onto a cloud accounting package with QuickBooks. And part of the thing there was actually helping people learn about bookkeeping and cloud accounting and so on by becoming a treasurer of Landcare. So I'm speaking at the moment with Institute of Certified Bookkeepers, where I was a previous director, about developing resources through the bookkeeping community, so people could outsource through that. But I think a great opportunity would be to say to people, joining Landcare as a treasurer is a great way to learn how to learn cloud computing and accounting and help them with their careers. And I'd be particularly happy to provide resources or discussion with people around that area.
Thanks, John. That is a great recommendation and something I haven't thought about. So thank you. So we'll wrap up. Kim, I'm not sure if you've got anything else to say.
No, I'm good. I'm here for Amy and Annette. I'm really excited to hear what's happening in Intrepid and to get that insight from, if we are wanting to attract younger people, John's spot on that it can be really challenging for younger people to come into an environment that's maybe not as exciting or maybe not as interesting as the things that they want to do. And so how do we adapt and maybe just end up being okay with just being who we are and knowing that Intrepid has got our backs?
Thanks, Kim. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed your passion and very clear about the strategy around this. So I'll head now to Amy. Amy Hansen. You ready, Amy? Amy she studied bioscience at uni and is very passionate about protecting of native ecosystems. She started a group, Mornington Peninsula Intrepid Landcare Group, after COVID, and to get younger people engaged and to learn more about flora and fauna, and she'll be sharing some of her experience.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks, Kim, for that really interesting presentation. I'm just going to try share my screen. Can you all see that? Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. So, my name's Amy. I started the Mornington Peninsula Intrepid Landcare Group. So I'm coming to you from Bunurong Boomerang land, and also would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land, and extend that to the lands that you're coming from. So basically, I've studied environmental science and I've worked in the industry for a few years now. And during COVID, I was working from home and working on a computer and was really missing that on-ground experience and practicing my ID skills and getting out there and getting my hands dirty. And the framework of sort of the standard friends group or Landcare group just wasn't as appealing to me. There was a quite older demographic and sort of tackling the same, at the same location every time. And I thought to myself, after speaking with some friends, wouldn't it be great to do something ourselves? And got in contact with the Landcare facilitator down here, and she helped me start the Intrepid group. So my presentation, it's quite short. I've just got some pictures of our working bees, but I'll also talk to you about what's worked and what some of our challenges are. So as Kim sort of spoke about, which I really resonated with, regarding volunteers, particularly what I've noticed with younger groups is maybe people tapping in for that smaller bite-sized volunteer, and not as frequent, and then also having those people who are there recurrently. So what I've sort of done with our Intrepid group is organising sort of one-time fun educational events that are not as frequent but offer so that mutual benefit of education and also hands-on, so a bit of weeding or bit of relationship building or connecting with other young people, sort of getting the message out there, and that is sort of targeting a more broader audience. And then also having smaller weeding working bees, and that's typically with a closer group. So for me, that's with my closer like friends that I know who come along. We sort of catch up and we go do some weeding. What I've found really helpful is, I guess as a young person, it can seem daunting to start a land care group when everyone's talking about committees and insurance and who's going to be the treasurer. And when I started, I was like, that's too much. I just want to get out on the ground and I just want to have an event or do some weeding. So fortunately we had, I'm part of the umbrella Mornington Peninsula Land Care Network. And we were, really lucky to be supported by them and our land care facilitator, Chantel, who is amazing. She's been so much help. But basically, we don't have a membership. We don't work on a membership. So we got a grant from the network to pay for our insurance the first year. And we've got another grant this year that paid for that. And also the network auspices us. So if we get any money, it goes to them. So we don't have that responsibility of money. And I think that works really well, because a lot of us are working full time and it's hard. Yeah, it's mostly just me doing a lot of it. So it's hard to sort of have all those different roles. But hopefully as the group sort of continues, we'll get more people wanting to be actively involved. And another strategy that the group has done is sort of stepping in and using the resources of existing friends groups and land care groups. So instead of us having to, because there are so many groups down on the peninsula, every few months it's identifying, okay, what new EVC or what new area do we want to work on this time? And then contacting the local friends group or land care group and either joining on one of their working bees or getting someone from their working bee to come and support us and lend us their resources and be there for sort of that more mentoring and educational part, which has been really good. And we've met some awesome people through doing that. Also understanding, what motivates young people in your area. So I've noticed that so having that education aspect, so, really making it interesting and learning about the area that you're in and also making a difference. We want to get our hands dirty. We want to see those weeds removed, having that active nature is really great because that's what a lot of young people want to do as well. So having those events that are really engaging and interesting, and then also we have those more hands-on working bees, but moving it around and in different places. The Intrepid Land Care Network has been really beneficial. That's a group of other Intrepid groups across the state and country. So they're a really good resource to tap into because they've got groups who are already established. And there's also always going to be new people who are wanting to start a group. So I think trying to support young people to start these groups is the best way to engage other young people because I get like with my group, it's my housemate, it's my friends, it's my people that I know in the local community who I'm getting to come, and it's being led by that younger cohort. I think it's really important. And then social media, so having a good presence on Instagram and Facebook. So I use that quite a lot to share my events and contact people, and then promotion. So whether that's using an Eventbrite to create an event and then getting people's emails and postcodes and stuff from that, which I can access later on. I've also got an email list. I use Canva, which I've used for this presentation, flyers, and word of mouth. So some of the tools in terms of challenges, I guess for young people, a lot of us work full-time or part-time. So availability and time being able to give is a restraint. So we have all our events on the weekend. We try not to saturate the months with events, so keeping them every few months so that it's keeping it fresh and fun and exciting for people. Financial and resources can be, a constraint. So again, we have the auspice of the network and the Landcare facilitator who's got us grants, which is really great. Equipment. So again, just tapping into those resources from the other Landcare or Parks Vic or friends groups and being able to use their stuff is really, really helpful. Continuity is difficult, I guess. And again, with what we were speaking about before, with a lot of young people, we don't own land, so we don't have that same ownership of, we want people to come to our property. We don't want to necessarily be working on property. We want to be mostly, I'd say, on public land and being able to give back on land that we can access. So I guess you get from the general cohort renting, you do get a lot of people coming in and out. So that's why instead of focusing on one park near your house, it's going to different places on the peninsula so that it's keeping it so it's not just localized, it's exploring your whole neighborhood. Again, engaging young people, it's always difficult. You're always competing with other needs on the weekends. Commitment, again, that's why having those one-time events is quite beneficial, because you're not asking for a huge commitment from people. They can tap in and tap out as they like. And then the responsibilities of, having those roles. So having the support, again, from the Landcare facilitator is really helpful. I'll just go through some of our events that we've done recently and some photos. So our first event was a walk and talk with this Sheep Wash Creek Landcare group. So we had 3 really knowledgeable members from the group who we met in Arthur's Seat. We had a really good turnout with that one. We did a 3-hour walk where we learned all about the geology and the native vegetation, and then we also targeted some sallow water along the way. So it was pretty casual. All the tools were provided by Sheep Wash Creek. It was a really awesome time. We all went out for lunch after, so it was a good time to connect with people. And then we had another smaller weeding working bee at Arthur's Seat. So again, all these events I'm sharing on Facebook, or I'm emailing my email list and getting the message spread through social media. We had another educational walk with local ecologist Gidja Walker. So that was really great. We had models and we had lots of questions, and it was really interesting, particularly for people who were working in that environment space, because it was a little bit more specific. Then we've also run Cool Light Conversations. So that was with my old colleague from Parks Victoria. We utilised the observatory at the Coolan Wetlands, and we held some speaker events with local environmentalists or researchers. This is just an example of how using Canva or something can really be engaging and great for young people to get to see and to connect with.
Amy, I'm sorry interrupting, but we need to move on. If that's okay, sorry.
That's all right. There's just there's another working bee, and then we've got some upcoming events. So our Nature Connection Camp, which is to build more long-term investment from people and continuity. Then we've got a Next Generation Grant, which is a skill building. So getting skills built with the attendees, and then we've got some more all that conversations. And that is it.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. And I'm sorry, but we're
That's okay.
really rushing for time at the
I
moment.
couldn't see the
but-
time, so sorry.
Yeah, I know, no, it's fine. And I just want to acknowledge that both Amy and Annette are young people volunteering their time today. So thank you. So Annette Kavana, she'll head she'll take over now. And you can start probably sharing your screen and I'll introduce you. She's quite an amazing girl. She grew up in country Victoria and has been part of Landcare most of her adult life. She lives in Melbourne and is doing a PhD studying plant biodiversity on farms to determine how natural capital can be optimized in agricultural systems. So get in touch with her if you need any info about that. Annette is also the present chair of the National Board of Intrepid Landcare. So
great.
Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for that introduction. And yeah, it's really good to hear you speaking, Kim and Amy as well. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. What I'm going to speak about tonight is a lot about what's already been spoken about. So it's really just going to be driving home those messages. So just to give you a bit of a background on Intrepid Landcare. My slides are moving. Sorry, I don't think they're going across. Oh, okay. So Intrepid Landcare was founded in 2015 by Megan Lee and Naomi Edwards, and this was in an effort to address that problem of young people not being involved in landcare. And when we talk about young people, we kind of mean sort of the 18 to 30-something-year-old demographic, and I guess it's filling that age group between junior landcare and then, as we know, where normal landcare seems to be typically older people. So yeah, filling in that younger demographic. And Intrepid Landcare works by empowering young people to lead and act to do stuff that matters to them. And that stuff that matters can be a cause or a project or an interest or anything that young people think is of benefit to their community and that takes their interest. And Intrepid Landcare typically does this by combining outdoor adventure and recreation, so making the events a bit more engaging and stimulating for young people, and then combines this with conservation purpose so that there is that environmental meaning there. So when Megan and Naomi first started out, they did a survey on young adults in New South Wales and Queensland to find out why young adults weren't involved in landcare in the first place. And as it's been come up tonight quite a few times, is that one of those bigger barriers was time. And that's expected as young people are going to uni or have young families or are starting new jobs. But aside from that, young people have just not been aware of the opportunities that are out there, or they are the only young person at a landcare group, so they don't feel quite comfortable there and they don't really feel comfortable turning up. There's also other issues with getting to location or getting to events. And as Kim said before, surprisingly, about 50% of young people said that they weren't actually even invited to landcare events. So with this all in mind, that's where Intrepid Landcare has come along to try and break down these barriers using culture, adventure and conservation. So I'm just going to go through the approach that we use in Intrepid Landcare and give you some tips and tricks on how you can get some young people involved. So I founded with my friend Jess the Upper Goulburn Intrepid Landcare in the Murrumbidgee Shire around Seymour and Mansfield as well. And I just want to pay respects to the Taungurung people of whose land that we work and play on. So we've created this in 2019, but when we started out, the first thing that was really important, and it is really important for anyone who wants to get young people involved, is to listen to what young people's needs and wants are. So we ran an interest event where we got some young people together and we just had a bit of a chat and see why did they come along, what did they want to see out of landcare. And what came out was that they loved the outdoors, or they wanted to make the world a better place or gain work experience, etc. And also what's really important for young people and for everyone really is that connection, wanting to feel connected to the local community, connected to like-minded people, connected to nature. Yeah, that's a really important thing for young people. So just knowing what those needs and wants are could help direct your projects and what you're going to do going forward. We also have to think about what we can offer young people in our community, so or in our group or in our area. So for us in the Upper Goulburn area, thinking about adventurous activities, we did an event up in Lake Mountain, so we're quite close to the snowfields, and we've got quite nice bushland areas around, places where you can go hiking and that sort of thing. But we can also offer young people skills and experience, and we've got lots of tapping into the networks that we've got in our community, whether that's the other land care groups or the Catchment Management Authority. And also we had to think about what kind of support that we could offer young people to participate. So some of us drive, so we'd be able to offer carpooling opportunities for people to come along to events. We were able to get financial support from the local land care network. Yeah, so just some of the things that what can we actually give young people, what's in it for them to be involved in land care. We also try to make our events easy to get involved in. So we don't have meetings or events on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock. We make sure that they're on the weekends or in the evenings. And we alternate days on the weekends. If it's, sometimes we'll do Saturday, sometimes we'll do Sunday, and that helps if people are working set shifts every single Saturday or something, they can actually come along. Our events are no cost or low cost to avoid that barrier, and they're non-committal. And as Amy said before, we don't expect that you have to come up every single week or every single month or whatever. Come as you please and when you can. It's also, we try our best to make our events really engaging and relatable right from the get-go. So that starts out from when you're pitching your project to the wider community and trying to get young people involved, marketing, using graphics and pictures and using the language that young people relate to, advertising on social media like Facebook and Instagram, but also realizing that sometimes we have events and not very many people come, but that's okay. But it's just then, I guess, important that we sort of reflect and adapt and think about what did work, what didn't work, what can we do differently, and know that trends with young people are changing. So what might have been cool at one point in time might not be so cool anymore. It's also really important to value the input of young people. So we make sure that we're co-designing our projects together. It's not just one person that puts together an event. We all work together. We might take it in turns. And this really gives people a sense of responsibility and that ownership of that event or that activity, and actually really being involved. And just making sure that whether young people are involved in designing the project or whether they're just coming along and being a part of the activity, that we're really just appreciating that they've come along and been a part of that, and just really giving our thanks and showing gratitude to them. And as the survey said, we want to make sure that we're actually specifically and personally inviting young people to come along. And we all know young people in our lives, whether they're our children or grandchildren or work colleagues or neighbours or whatever. But it's just really important just to personally tap them on the shoulder, send them a message and just say, hey, why don't you come along to this event, and invite a friend. And also people aren't necessarily going to say yes, they might say no, so don't have those expectations. And even if they do say yes on the day, they might not actually come. So just, yeah, having no expectations there either. So we have had quite a few people involved in our group, but retaining and attracting more young people, what's really worked here is to make sure that you're creating that positive experience. And Kim did touch on this. So we don't forget our experiences quickly. So just really making sure that people are feeling welcome, they're having a great time. And even if things don't go to plan, there's always going to be something there that is positive that can be taken home. And make sure you're also sharing inspiring stories. So having those testimonials, or young people going out and they're going to go and tell their friends and say, oh, I had an amazing time here. you should come next time. And those stories are really is what's passed around, and that's what creates that change. And as Bernadette has said here, she's loved how genuine and welcoming everyone has been. So being really welcoming and inclusive goes a long way. So I guess some key takeaways, which is reiterating what I've said, but also Kim and Amy have said, is just to make sure you're listening to the needs and wants of young people. If you want them to be included, you've got to target what they would like. Co-design projects with young people so that the projects by young people for young people. Avoid those prohibitors, don't do the midweek activity and have them at low cost. Make sure you're actually inviting young people. Really foster those meaningful connections. So those connections with other young people and also connections to nature, and that mental well-being, is really important there with the connections. And that's going to create a positive experience that's going to be shared amongst young people and getting more people involved. And just as a final plug for Intrepid Landcare and being the Intrepid Landcare chair, I just want to say that this Intrepid Landcare model and approach has worked really effectively across the country, and we now have around 20 Intrepid Landcare groups that are all using this method and getting young people involved in the environmental space. So if you've got any questions or want any more information, you can contact me here. Thanks.
Thanks, Annette. That was so good. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone's got a lot out of it, both of you and Amy's and Kim's. I'm conscious of time, so I know that we're running out of time. So unless someone has a very, very important question, that you want to share with everyone, but otherwise we'll move on, because I understand everyone's probably getting a bit square in your chair, and I just have a few other things to share with you that you might be important for your group or useful. And from LVI, we've got some resources at LVI that you can actually, some of them you can download from our website and that you can take to your events. So the ones you can see, you've got the stickers as well. Just get in touch with us if you need any of those. So you can download at our website. You can request us to send us a pack of hard copies. We have limited numbers, but if members are really needing these packs, we'll work hard to get some more done. These also, so this, I don't know if you remember, Kim mentioned a video that from Landcare at the Landcare Australia event. This is a really inspiring video about two generations that got together to deliver some great outcomes for Landcare. So I really recommend watching it. There's some good resources, and I will be sharing some of those with you later via an email about how induct people into your board. And just to be aware that sometimes there are grants available to involve volunteers in Landcare. None of these are open, but just keep an eye on their page, because sometimes they can come up. They are regular grants, so just keep an eye out. And for the next webinars, which I would definitely recommend to attend, because there will be a follow-up of this one, that all makes sense. To engage new volunteers, we really need to work hard on our basics, to make sure we're working on a good committee. We understand our roles, we understand our responsibilities, we know how to get people involved. And so these next two webinars will be touching on that. And you'll find out about them. We'll let you know via email, via Facebook. So you'll donate. You'll receive an invitation for this. And last thing to do is to say thank you for everyone that has stayed in until now, and especially to Kim, to Annette, and to Amy for their time today, and for the valuable contribution to all of us. If there are any other questions, please feel free to email us and we can get back to you. But we will share the video of this webinar at a later date, and we will also be sharing some of these presentations if Annette and Amy and Kim are happy with it. And we'll also be doing a more of a 1 to 2 page information sheet about how to engage volunteers, so you can take back to your community, to your committees and to your groups. Hope you all have a good night and a good dinner if you're a late dinner like myself. And I'll see you next time on the 7th of March, a month from today. Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good night. Stop sharing. Now we'll stop the recording.